Our next speaker is Scott Branting, who's the Director of Mapping and Data Integration at the American Schools of Oriental Research, Cultural Heritage Initiatives in Syria and Iraq. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you very much, Bonnie. Thank you to both the World Monuments Fund and the Getty Conservation Institute for hosting us and bringing us here to present to you today. The project that I'm going to be talking about is a little bit different than what you just saw. There are different difficulties that we face in a conflict situation in Syria and Iraq, where perhaps we don't want to let people know where some of the cultural heritage is, but still provide ways that we can monitor and check up on it and try and understand what is happening in a conflict situation. First, a little bit of background in terms of the ASOR Syrian Heritage Initiative. And while the title says Syrian Heritage Initiative, our purview also includes ISIL-controlled portions of Iraq since last October. It has three major goals: to document damage, to promote global awareness of what's happening, and finally to also begin planning emergency and post-war responses to find some way to emerge from the conflict and find ways to preserve cultural heritage in the longer term. There are a wide range, as you can see, of the different activities we have, everything from weekly reports that we put out to understanding sources from social media or other sources in country, working with satellite data, which I'll be showing quite a bit about, as well as building inventories of sites in these locations that we then can monitor through these means. And finally, also then preparing with assessments and on-the-ground information to allow people to hit the ground and running once the conflict ends. It's a collaborative partnership then between the American Schools of Oriental Research and the U.S. State Department, and also has received funding from the J.M. Kaplan Fund to do the activities that you'll see. First of all, a few examples here of what it is that we're looking at. This is the site of Nimrud that has been in the news quite recently, located in northern Iraq. This is the Northwest Palace up on the Citadel, and here we can see it in this image from February 26th, prior to much of the damage that has recently been in the news. Using then a variety of different satellite sources, both digital globe as well as skybox imaging, some imagery from Planet Labs, we're able to then task satellites or get existing imagery to take a look and sort of see the developing situation in the conflict. We can move ahead to March 7th. And at this point, we already start to see some damage taking place. Many rumors were also floating around here in the first week of March that ISIL had gone to the site and was doing damage to the site. Things we can point out in this image include they've broken through the wall here into the Northwest Palace, probably with a bulldozer. And then also here there was this white spot that we noticed coming out from the palace, which we thought could be related to the reliefs that were on display within the palace itself under the covered areas of the site. And we could then link this on April 11th with a video that was released by ISIL showing, in fact, this white spot on the ground. Here are the reliefs themselves being carried out by bulldozers, and then attacking them with jackhammers and other mechanisms, sledgehammers and such, to break them up into that white pile that we see. But we can then sort of put together a timeline in which this destruction actually was taking place, and we can see that in the video that they released, portions of this were filmed much earlier than later portions that we'll see. We can then move ahead to the April 17th image from roughly a little over 2 weeks ago, following the explosion at the site. And we can link this up then with the imagery that they showed in the video, the second part of the video, showing the bombs placed alongside the remaining reliefs, and then the explosion and detonation of the palace itself for the destruction of this cultural heritage site. Other examples that we can look at, this is the site of Mari and Deir el-Zor within Syria itself. Here we can look at this important site at the expansion of looting over time. This image from 2011 shows very little looting. But by March of 2014, we already see quite a large expansion here of small looting holes, creating sort of a lunar landscape as groups are then allowed to go to the site to mine it for antiquities. And then a massive expansion that we see with ISIL moving forward with this by November of 2014. We can also look at the infrastructure of this looting, new roadways that are appearing as tracks as people are bringing in heavy machinery, as well as this structure over here with small cell-like rooms right alongside the road that we were concerned may be part of a storage facility to sort and then to put onto to trucks the antiquities to move out of the country. We can also look at more conflict damage directly itself. This location in downtown Aleppo near the citadel of Aleppo. And we can look at it here in 2013, already showing some evidence of damage. But then by 2014, with tunnel bombs having been exploded in the vicinity of the citadel, as well as additional damage from other bombs, we can start to detail out where this damage is occurring and how it is in relationship to the cultural heritage in this location. So far we've been able to put together an inventory of sites, not just individual examples, but on a much broader scale. We've been able to look at 4,414 sites so far to detail damage, and we're finding that 1,107 of these, a little over 25% of the sites, are showing evidence of damage due both to the conflict and other activities, and that 73 have been very severely damaged. And many of these severely damaged sites are, of course, the most important sites or the largest sites within Syria that are very well known or that are World Heritage sites. We can then take this data, we can start looking at this and plotting this over time. We can compare this to different areas that were controlled by different groups at different periods. And we can do all this within sort of a geo-referenced system. And that's where ARCHES comes into play. We've been able to upload our sites into the latest version of ARCHES. Here, as with the LA example, you can see the different little circles showing the number of sites that we have in these different locations. And we can then zoom in on an area like the area around the citadel of Aleppo and see all of the different cultural heritage that is available in this location, much like you could see with LA. But then we can compare this to the destruction that's taking place from the conflict itself. In addition, ARCHES provides a very useful platform for us to reach out to different groups that are doing this very similar sorts of work. So work being done by the UN, work being done by a consortium of former excavators within Syria called Syrian, whose geospatial group is out of the University of Durham. We're able to, if we're all on the ARCHES platform, then to share data between each other, to compare different sorts of data, to overlay it on satellite imagery, and to provide then vignettes or aspects of that from different images that we can upload into the ARCHES system, to then share more broadly, to bring to bear all the different resources that each of the groups are doing, rather than us each working on our own little silo independently and not understanding what the other groups have and can bring to an understanding of the whole puzzle that we face. In addition, we'll be using it for condition assessments. We'll have a variety of different experts that will be looking through the imagery as well as on-the-ground reports and comparing these, and then using a condition assessment wizard that was built within ARCHES version 3 for them to upload their detailed assessments of what is happening. You can see here the different steps that they can go through with a generalized description and basic condition. They can upload imagery that they might have either from on-the-ground sources or from satellites. They can detail out in a categorized format what the disturbances and threats that are faced by each of the individual cultural heritage sites. And finally, some recommendations as to how we can move ahead. We're hoping to then have this not only within our project, but also to expand this to experts working in a variety of parts of the world to be able to get on and get access to the data that we have to be able to pull together these detailed condition assessments and lay the groundwork for eventually emerging from the conflict and finding ways that we can do something to preserve cultural heritage and build back, in some cases, aspects of the cultural heritage that have been lost within both of these countries. So the sort of system that we'll have envisioned, we'll have, for instance, here we have the site of Mari. You'll be able to pull up Mari, pull up a detailed report on it, and we'll be able to share this with governments of the different countries as we move into the reconstruction phase, and also use this as the basis for experts out in the field to be doing detailed assessments once the conditions allow, and to manage these sites then moving forward for the long term. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. That was terrific.